figures and that occupancy level where it needs to be. We're, of course, working on growing existing market, our social, military reunions, conventions, religious, et cetera. We're working very hard to increase that impact on the community because we all know it's always easier to get the same sort of customer that you currently have. And at the same time, we are researching what emerging trends that are being developed in the industry, how Columbus can appeal to certain markets that perhaps we are not currently marketing to replace that business that we've lost because of what's happening at Benning. All right,
Peter,
yes.
as you go on, I wondered, we've been asking people to come back with more information and drill down a little bit. Do you keep these numbers in relation to particular events, how something going on in Broadway affects hotel rooms, or how an event at the River Center the Springer, when they had that big thing, how many hotel rooms were sold for that? Do you correlate, or could you look to see those dates and give us specific information?
Right. We do have an impact calculator that we license through our international association. So with certain data provided by event organizers or organizations, we can put that into our model, and we can bring back what that might be.
And I know that I used to, of course, sit on the board of the River Center, and probably all these others too, but and I know that, you're going to have a conference here and 200 people are coming, and that's going to have a $2 million impact or whatever, and so I understand that. What I'm talking about is being able to go back and say, on January 15th, there was a big event at X place, and we saw a 15% increase in rooms from what our standard is. I think that would be very helpful because as I do get information from citizens, sometimes I wonder if those are just those events, like on Broadway, a concert at Broadway. Is there really somebody coming from somewhere else and spending the night in the hotel for the concert on Broadway, or is that for us, our community? It's not a value judgment on the importance of the event. It's just how many rooms were associated with that event. Anyway, if you could look and see if you can get us that type of specific data related to large events so we can get some context on is there a direct impact to hotel rooms and particular events our community is having.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Councilor Davis.
Madam Mayor, I had to step out to take a break there for a minute, but I think, I understand this graph, but what I wanted to add into this is that typically in our city, the way it works is you have, Mr. Bowd, you can correct me if you want to, but typically you have 3 peak periods and 3 down periods.
Correct.
And it's always been pretty consistent throughout the history of Columbus, Georgia, in the hospitality business. This graph does show some major effects, I believe, in some decision-making, not only at the state level, but things that have happened out at Fort Benning as well, and it's affected our community. If you go deeper into some of the research, you'll see that we're losing business to Alabama, and you'll see that there's been an impact in other areas. Now, the good thing, Madam Mayor, I think you know this, council needs to hear this, is that we were somewhat effective in getting the government per diem back up.
Yes.
Our city, after the Great Recession, took a big hit, a $13, $14 hit in government per diem drop. Now it's come back up, which is good for our community. Still needs to be a little bit higher because you can make the argument that the other cities in Columbus, Georgia are much higher, in the state of Georgia are much higher than Columbus, Georgia. But there have been some other forces, Madam Mayor, that's affected us in our city recently, and we rely on the hotel motel tax to do a lot of things in our community and support the budget of the city as well.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Peter.
All right, great, thank you. All right, so the Cultural Arts Alliance is a committee or program of work within the CVB, and we facilitate an annual arts tourism grant from our programming, which is not just awarding these monies, and we talked about this the last time we were here when there was a question about the monies that were set aside for arts grants. But these funds also generate a matching funds in this granting process. And again, I need to emphasize that the primary score in these grants are tourism related. So this is not, again, local programming per se. It is also Majority of those scores are based on developing programs that will attract visitors to our community. So since 2006, this program has awarded over $1.7 million to the Arts Alliance since it moved from the Chamber to the CVB. And so when you factor in the multiplier or the fact that there are matching grants, the Cultural Arts Alliance, working with the CVB, have brought or invested $3.4 million in our community for programming. So that's pretty significant. I wanted to bring that forward. And as Councilor Thomas recognized, I did also want to recognize that a good many of the folks here in the audience are stakeholders, what the CVB would consider stakeholders. These are our arts organizations, our partners. These are patrons and staff and the executive directors. And I want to recognize them and thank them for being here today to listen to this message. So let's talk a little bit more about what the arts mean in our community. So we have to look at our arts and those entities as a business. These organizations and events that they produce, the program of work, certainly adds to the quality of life of Columbus and very important, but it also helps us, the CVB, attract visitors. 1.9 million visitors that we tracked last fiscal year. Part of the reason they came here, or part of the reason they extended their stay or brought their families or did business here, is because of the amenities that our community has to offer. There's a lot more to just that local program, and there's a direct expenditure or investment that each organization makes. And when you add the multiplier effect or the induced purchasing from that direct spending taking place in the community, the impact ripples throughout our city. So the direct expenditures are total almost $46 million. And again, this report is provided to us through Columbus State University's Butler School of Economic and Research. So these expenditures then created almost more than 1,400 jobs for our city. And when you take into account the multiplier, what happens when that money is recirculated or circulated within the community, we see an almost $31 million economic impact because of arts and that programming, along with 260 additional jobs. So the total economic impact for our community because of arts organizations, because of the Arts Alliance and all of the stakeholders that we mentioned earlier, this generates an impact of a little over $76 million for the city and more than 1,700 jobs for our community and for our citizens. This is equivalent to 25% of the local manufacturing industry in Columbus and nearly 60% of the local construction industry in our town. Overall, as an industry, arts institutions and that creative class that we talk about a lot these days is the 8th largest employer in Columbus. They're larger than Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia. They're larger than Columbus State University. Also keep in mind, from the visitor perspective, that there are, on average, every day, 5,160 visitors in our community. And each day, those visitors spend a little more than $69,000 on arts-related programs and events. That's every single day. We have new people in town bringing new money to our community, and they're patronizing our arts. All right, let's change gears for a moment and talk about our Camera Ready programming of work. Super excited about this as well because there's a lot that's happening. This industry, this process changes almost daily and has changed dramatically since the last time we reported to you all. As a reminder, Columbus was the first community, one of the first communities in the State Film Office Camera Ready program to be certified, and the CVB went through that process to earn that designation for Muskogee County, Columbus. So since last time we were here, we've updated our website. You can see by the highlighted in the red there, we've added another navigation tab so that those folks in the industry can find out more about what the programming is and what's available for them on the Columbus level. And then here's a snapshot of the microsite that we have built out for the Camera Ready program to, again, entice producers and filmmakers to look at Columbus. We've created more friendly user navigation, directing the users to the links like locations, in other words, where sites are available for filming production, the incentives that tie back to our relationship with the Georgia Film Office. services and resources that are available within the area so that these project makers will not have to bring in extra crew to support their projects. And, of course, the contact for the CVB so that we can quickly respond to those requests. And as a footnote, we are currently courting a film. We got a call through the city manager's office a couple of weeks ago. There's a small independent film project that is scheduled to begin filming here in Columbus in mid-April. And again, the staff working with the city and public safety are coordinating those efforts on their behalf. One of the critical things that we have in this website is our data bank, where locations are, where film can be made. We are currently working with the department, the Georgia Film Office, with their data bank to populate that, which is extremely critical to our leveraging Columbus for film. But the CVB has also invested in its own data bank. Again, it's a sister product of what is currently offered through the state level. And thanks to the volunteers that work on our Camera Ready Committee, they are working on this to build out that site. So again, when producers and filmmakers and those in the entertainment industry are looking at our destination for possibility of locations, this data bank, along with the state data bank, work together to lure that business to Columbus. What we're really excited about is the two additional initiatives that have come along since the last time we talked about film. And they are changing how Columbus and quite frankly, how our Camera Ready office is perceived and working to attract film in Columbus. The first part of this is the Georgia Film Academy, and this is a partnership between Columbus State University, Columbus Technical College, and the Springer Opera House. The Film Academy is, in essence, a workforce development resource. And the reason why, and this is the reason why we think this is critical to Columbus, and that it becomes a parallel strategy in attracting film industry to the city. The Film Academy addresses some of the challenges that seemed almost insurmountable when we began looking at trying to bring film to Columbus, so that we become another destination for the Walking Dead, if you will. Meaning that in trying to get film in Columbus on a large scale, not these independent, these 1 or 2 day shots, but a full-scale production done in our city. Our primary obstacle was geography. We were just too far away from the sound stages in the Atlanta area. We were outside that travel zone, so the cost of doing a full-scale production in Columbus went off the chart. But the Film Academy is changing that dramatically. It begins to solve that problem, and I'll explain what that means in just a few minutes. It's a certification program. The Film Academy in Columbus provides a certification program that was put together and Dr. Baxter can tell you the fascinating story that this was done in a matter of weeks rather than months when it takes to get curriculum passed through the Georgia regions. And it's because of the aggressiveness at CSU, this can-do attitude, is how it got done in weeks versus months. Classes started filling up in January so quickly that a second set of classes had to be added before the program launched. What this means is that there are students who are complete these courses will be equipped with what they need to do to go work in film. So again, workforce development here in Columbus. They'll be certified with the experience that they need. This, as part of a combined effort, both from the local and the state level, will make Columbus a hub for filmmaking. And during the presentation last week, I had the privilege of introducing the executive director for the Film Academy. He was here talking to student body at CSU and to the public. There's an idea to create a culture of film in Columbus, that Columbus is going to become a very unique destination for filmmaking, that it's going to help grow film in Columbus. And not just the workforce, but that production, the thing that's going to generate the economic impact that we all want, and the attention of making Columbus a desirable destination. And all those resources are coming together. The program puts Columbus citizens to work and stops importing workers, and we've heard this a lot lately in our world. It's going to stop this importing of workers from Hollywood and the neighboring states whose film industry had quite frankly gone bust because their incentive programs have died or gone away or been abated in some sort of way. And when we talk about jobs, this initial wave of students that will be graduating, they'll be working in what they call below-the-line jobs, but these jobs pay $85,000 on an annual basis. So these are high-paying jobs, these are good jobs, and they are permanent jobs, and that's why we are excited to be a part of this program. The Film Academy plans to vet film projects that will actually be done in Columbus, and again, that's the second part of this critical phase, and that's one of the things that makes a game changer for Columbus. There'll actually be projects done in Columbus. Instead of shipping those students off to the sound stages outside the Atlanta area to get their hands-on experience, they'll actually be able to do that work here in our city. I can't talk about the details yet, but what's really cool is that this second phase of training can be done in Columbus. So that means that these folks that are completing these classes and studies and receive that certification, they can stay in Columbus and work in film. It's a new industry for our city, and of course, these students can, of course, go anywhere in the country to work in film, anywhere in the world, quite frankly, to work in film. But because projects will be being done in Columbus, we'll be able to retain that workforce. So imagine what it'll be like when films are actually being produced on a full scale in Columbus. In essence, we're training the writing and producing and the filming all in Georgia, but in Columbus. And our resources can be focused on production versus recruiting. And I touched on it a moment ago, and what I've been told is that there is actually a film project that will be done in Columbus through the Film Academy. And those are the details that will be coming forth from after talking to the executive director of the Film Academy. So, again, something very, very exciting that is about to change, again, how Columbus is looked at is for film. The second part of the Camden Ready program work that the CV coordinates is making Columbus a destination for film festivals. This is another way for us to get the attraction of filmmakers, get their attention, either showcasing original work or showcasing excellent film genre. Columbus has not one but 2 film festivals this year, so we're again super excited about that aspect. The first is the American Youth Film Festival, which will take place this summer. And this is the second year for this particular festival, and we're glad that it is returning because, again, it is already has broken ground in its reputation. This fall, we'll see an inaugural film festival called the Way Down Film Festival join the Underground, a little edgy, so we're good with that. And again, this is featuring original work with the theme of short projects. They could be as short as 30 seconds or as long as they need to be in order to fall within that category. But again, both of these festivals will attract both national and perhaps even international filmmakers, and their product will be previewed and judged and viewed by the local community, which again will attract visitors and the attention of filmmakers from across the country. So that's all we have to say today. A lot going on. I want to thank you for your time and attention. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them, Mayor. We'll do some due diligence on your request. And again, I want to remind everyone that tourism is economic development, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to work on behalf of the city.
Great. Well, thank you, Peter. We appreciate the update, and that's very exciting about the movie industry, which is becoming one of the largest tourism industries in Georgia, if it's not already. It was very surprising to hear the governor talk about it at an event I attended in January for mayors, to hear how we're really becoming a location for the film industry. So thank you for all of your work on that. And let's see, Councilor Henderson.
Just want to plug in again and reiterate the value and the importance of CSU and them being so nimble that they were able to, just put it at, to borrow from some of the movie verbiage, put it at warp speed to get that thing up and running so quickly. Because the way I understood Mr. Stepikoff is the biggest impediment to us growing our film opportunities quickly is having competent, qualified, seasoned workers.
Exactly.
And with the speed with which this certificate program has taken off and the number of enrollees they have and their vision for the future, that's going to eliminate that hurdle. And it's really exciting. I had no idea that the film industry was a $5 billion, $6 billion business in Georgia. And we're always looking at generating jobs, and this is a relatively low infrastructure cost opportunity to generate more really good paying jobs. Anybody that doesn't have a job wants to get in that program. I wonder if they'll take old guys. Come out and they're making 85 a year pushing a cart with a grip on it. I always wondered what a key grip was anyway. So, thank you for what y'all are doing.
All right, we have Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Bowden, I happened to be looking back at this group of teachers sitting back here, drama folks, as you were talking, and they were glued to the screen. But I did want to mention, too, that just behind us here, on your way in today, you may have seen the groundbreaking Fine Arts High School that's going on back there. I know that Dr. Lewis has said to me that there are something like 35 or 40 different occupations other than the talent pool that deal with, that have to be in place for films. And so those folks are going to be able to funnel right into the CSU program, and it's going to be a terrific, I think, asset for Columbus, and we'll move beyond the Green Beret and some of the other movies that were filmed here a while ago. I saw the picture that you had of the bridge where the car chase was, and those kinds of things. And I want to thank you and what you're doing in CSU and the Springer for bringing all this to us. The kind of opportunities that this is presenting for the kids and students and folks in Columbus is just terrific. And I appreciate all the effort and the time that you've put into it, and it will only get better, I think.
Well, I wish we could take all the credit, but it's these guys. They did all the heavy lifting. Paul Pierce started that conversation with the film office of look at Columbus, we can do it. And as always, Columbus figured out how to do it so quickly, and it's a game changer. Film Academy is a game changer for Columbus.
I think so. Thanks for all you're doing.
Counselor Davis.
Mr. Bowden, thank you so much for coming today and being with us. And I don't think sometimes people really realize the complexity of the Bureau and CVB and what you guys are involved in on a day-in, day-out basis. But in reality, hospitality in general, and that encompasses a lot of areas, whether it's sport tourism, whether it's the arts community, whether it's the business, whether it's the movie industry, tourism, those kind of things all come under that heading of hospitality. But the reality is it's one of the top three supporting legs of the Columbus economy. It is. And, and I look at the graphs and the information that you showed us earlier, I can't sit here and make people's schedules and tell them when to come to Columbus, but, we can work on some of those down periods.
Absolutely.
And get those up. What a significance that would be. The other thing would be if we could just get people to stay one more day. If you can get them to stay one more day, I don't think people realize the significance and the impact of that. But we do have a lot of events that are already established here in our community that we got to do whatever we can to protect them and keep them here because of that the impact that it brings.
Exactly.
And we talk a lot. Even I saw your report on the economic impact of that one event that we just had at the Aquatic Center, and I saw the economic impact report on some of the potential events that we could get over here and what it could do. But when you mash it all together, it's economic impact and development for our community at a high level. So we appreciate you and all the people in the various tourism communities and what they do to help our city be the best that it can be and
Thank you.
and reach its full potential.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Peter, and for all of you all who have come out supporting the arts today. We greatly appreciate you being here. I did want to tell you I'll be meeting with Norman Easterbrook here soon related to the River Center. I'm sure Paul will be in my office at some time soon to talk about this discussion related to the sales tax and the allocation we've been having. And I wanted to just leave you with some thoughts so that those conversations can be as productive as possible, because I've been copied on a lot of emails related to this important issue, and it struck me that the setup of the discussion as swimming versus arts is not productive, nor even really the point. I can't speak for the other counselors. I certainly can speak for myself. There's no question in my mind that the cultural arts is a huge economic impact. I've participated in those kinds of studies, and in fact, as a private citizen, was before council in the old building when Paul made the first economic development presentation. I came to support Paul on that. So just personally, and I believe all of the 10 counselors understand the economic impact of the arts. I would say as we go forward in the discussion, for me, and I think it is the question, it's this: when a city cannot pay for its public facilities and programs, should the city be giving public monies to private entities? It's a policy question. And so when we discuss, I'd like to hear more about that, not swimming isn't as important as the arts, and because we just pitch our citizens against each other. And we think you're all important. That's why we're here and either elected at large or by districts, is to represent those varying interests. So again, to me, the question is, should the city, when it cannot pay for its public facilities and public programs, be allocating public monies to a private entity? It's a huge, huge question. I'd also say we talk a lot in our community about public-private partnerships. Every one of your organizations has had a public-private partnership with the city, dates back decades, long before I was ever in the seat. And I'd suggest that a public-private partnership isn't just about building a $70 million facility. It's not just about how to leverage public money so you can get more private donors. That's part of it, and we do that quite well. I would say it's also about what do we do as a community in tough times? How can we partner? And so I think we got off to a little perhaps human nature, but adversarial engagement, when really maybe we should have gotten off to how can we partner, figure out this problem, and get a solution that serves all of our interests and all of our needs. So to the extent we can back away from adversarial, and I understand it's political and it's money, so if you feel you need a political adversarial strategy, I can't make that decision for you. You have to protect your own best interest, your entity's own best interest. I suspect, though, that working through to find a solution through a partnership-type matrix that we've used successfully in other ways would be most beneficial. But again, I leave that to you all to talk about. So maybe that frames it a little bit better. Maybe takes a little steam out of the conversation. Maybe not. I don't know. But I did think we were getting off into a rather unproductive path with the whole. There's more arts people than swim people. There's more swim people than arts people. There's more, at least for me, that's not the question. So I hope that's been helpful, and I hope some of what you've heard today has been helpful, and we'll go forward and have a very productive conversation. So thank you all very much. And with that, we'll move on to our agenda. We have authorities expenditures. Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge is going to come and speak. I want to mention that for counselors that weren't able to be here last time, this came up in a discussion about whether or not there would be an authority in the sort of actual legal meaning of that word, an independent authority for the aquatic center. But I understand there's been a lot of development in this conversation with the stakeholders, meeting with our city attorney. Pops Barnes was there, and so I think it will be further elucidated by that subsequent meeting. But this was to look at the costs of authorities. There was a discussion. Some of our authorities and some of the state authorities, of course, pay much higher salaries than the city does. Some of their contracts are not as meager as the city is required to adopt. And so we wanted to look at the cost-benefit analysis, or not the cost-benefit analysis, the cost analysis of the authorities. But as we do that, I know there's going to be an addendum here of new information. I think you all received the email from Brian Abeda this morning that talked about they're looking more at sort of an advisory commission. So let's go through this since it was a council referral, and then we'll open up for the city attorney and Councilor Barnes to bring us up to date to where the stakeholders group is. Pam.
And so what I've done since last week is just put together a list of authorities, some similar to what the Aquatic Center Authority could look like, and some that are generated or set up by state law, some by local legislation. So this is just not every authority that we have, but just a list for comparison purposes. The Columbus Convention and Trade Center, and what I've included in this chart is the number of employees, the annual budget, any subsidy or taxpayer support, the director or the CEO's salary, and the number of board members, and then if it was established by a local ordinance. So under the Trade Center, 28 employees, $2.6 million budget. They do receive 1% of the hotel motel tax, approximately $600,000, and 30% of the beer tax collection, which equates to about $750,000. Director salary at $110,000, and they have 5 board members, and it was created by a local ordinance. On the Golf Authority, 29 employees, $1.7 million budget. They do receive a subsidy from the general fund of approximately $300,000 in the current budget year. Director salary at $92,000. They do have 9 board members and established by local ordinance. The Columbus Building Authority, which is just an authority that looks at building and issuance of bonds. They don't have any employees or a budget per se, no real taxpayer support. As far as the authority itself is concerned, there's no director, but there are 5 board members, and that was established by state law, not a local ordinance. The Hospital Authority of Columbus, formerly Muskogee Manor, 746 employees, a $39 million budget, and currently has not received any taxpayer support in any recent years. Director salary at $265,000, 9 board members, and was not established by local ordinance. The Development Authority, no real employees. They do have a contract with the chamber that does administrative functions for the Development Authority. A $1.1 million budget, which is from the 0.25 mils of the property tax value. Director salary is not applicable, and they have 7 board members. Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is not really an authority, but is established as a bureau. 9 employees, a $2.6 million budget, and they do receive 4% of the hotel motel tax. And then they provide an allocation to the Sports Council from those funds. And you can see the footnote at the bottom that 99.5% of the revenue comes from hotel motel tax. They do have some miscellaneous revenue that's generated. Director salary at $112,000, board members at 9, and this was established through a local ordinance. Sports Council, again, is not really an authority, but more of a nonprofit. They do receive a portion of the hotel motel tax through the CVB. 3 employees, a $724,000 budget. The director at $64,000. They have 9 board members. The Airport Commission, number of employees 44, a $4.6 million budget, and they do receive $40,000 from the city as an agency appropriation. Director at $129,000, 5 board members, and they were not established by local ordinance. And the last one, the Columbus Waterworks, 280 employees, almost a $69 million budget. They don't receive support, but they do provide to the city, to the general fund, 6% of net water and sewer sales. So they do provide revenue to the city. Director salary at $173,000. 6 board members, and not established by local ordinance. So this is just to give you some comparative information as you discuss creating an authority for the Aquatic Center and some comparative information.
Okay. And let's go to Councilor Barnes. I know that Councilor Allen was the one who was talking about the sort of legalized, separate, independent authority, and then subsequently Councilor Barnes has had some meetings.
Primarily, the
Michael.
Whoops. Hold on. There you go.
primarily what the stakeholders wanted were they want a little bit more say. These are individuals, as I mentioned last time, that they've been involved in swimming and swimming functions for years. And they have viable input and want to impart that viable input for the operation of the natatorium. I think it would be beneficial. So what the city attorney, he drew up a perfect explanation of what functioning they wanted to have. And I think it was pretty much an agreement. They had a meeting last night. I couldn't attend. But from what I can understand, I got an email message, as all of us did, that they're pretty much in concert with having an advisory commission.
And Mr. City Attorney, is that what you drew up last time for us, more or less? Or is there a difference?
It is. We tweaked it a little bit after yesterday's
Right.
meeting, but we're going to bring it first business meeting in
With a
April
sponsor.
with Councilor Barnes as sponsor. But it is strictly an advisory commission, but they have the right to go in and look at all the financials of the aquatic center and other pools monthly. They can make written recommendations to the council anytime they want to about something they think ought to be done or changed, and it's advisory only, but Mr. Abeda and the others seem to prefer that approach, at least at this point. Let's get that on the books and give them some input as an advisory commission.
Okay. All right, we have Councilor Thomas.
Ms. Hodge, do any of these authorities generate sales tax for the city? I mean, I'm thinking like the Convention and Trade Center, when they do an event and serve food, do they charge sales tax that we then
Yes,
get?
they would generate sales tax from events.
So we get some sales tax from the Convention and Trade Center. The Gulf Authority?
Yes. Yes. Certain things would charge sales tax for, yes.
Are there others that we get? Waterworks, we get tax money?
Yes,
money
we
back?
do.
Is
And there's
that-
probably services kind of offered through some of these agencies that would generate sales tax, but maybe not directly from the agencies. I'm thinking of like the Sports Council, if they brought an event to town, those participants in that
right.
event, but the Sports Council itself wouldn't really generate the sales
right.
tax.
And all of these are, I don't know if independent is the right word, but autonomous boards. I
Maybe
mean,
a
for
legal
example, if
question.
the Convention and Trade Center Authority makes a decision, that's it. I mean, they have the authority to do that, right?
Yes, in that particular case, and I'll just defer to Clifton if he wanted to add
Yeah.
to anything.
Mr. City Attorney, if you could explain, like, the autonomy spectrum for
That
an
would be
authority.
helpful.
Yeah.
Well, generally, the Trade Center Authority, for example, they are given power to hire their executive director, who in turn can hire and fire employees. They have power to create their own budget, which they do. They bring to council as a proposed budget. They have the power to enter contracts with food service companies and other caterers for different events. And they pretty much run an independent operation. Now, they're created by ordinance of this body, and you could take all those powers away, but they are run as an independent body and do all their employment decisions independently of this body. Their employees are in the merit system of the city,
Right.
but they just operate independently as far as their governing board.
And that is generally true of all of the authorities on this page, is that
Well, the ones
correct?
created by ordinance,
Created.
yes. The state law authorities, they, like the Development Authority, Housing Authority, Hospital Authority, they have total independence once you make an appointment. On those boards, they have broad powers under state law with respect to their operations, whether it's a hospital, developing property, development authority, selling, leasing property. Their powers are all established by state law, not this council.
Yeah,
Thank-
yeah, and I think
That's helpful.
we may not need a clarification, but just that with a state authority, council's control and oversight comes through appointment. But
That's
with
right.
a local ordinance, it's not only appointment, but it could be budgetary, it could be tweaking of the ordinance in some way.
That's right. You can always amend your boards that are created by ordinance, but you don't have that luxury with the state law authorities.
Mr. City Manager?
So, Mr. City Attorney, so with just a question, and we could use the Trade Center for the question, and so they sign contracts and they do all those things. If there's litigation, and who's responsible for providing legal representation, and then if we are not successful, who's responsible for damages?
The authorities that are created by ordinance, we always undertake representation if their governing board is sued, for example. And of course, it'd be up to this council whether they want to amend the budget that they propose if there was some judgment against them. But y'all would have to take that into consideration. But
Well, and I only ask that question because we pass on this governing authority, and they can sign contracts and do all of those things. But if there are errors and omissions or something, although they are a governing authority and they make decisions, then we're ultimately responsible.
could
Or
be.
could be.
Could be, yes, for the ones created by ordinance. Now, I'm not sure if Trade Center may have some separate officers and directors liability insurance. I don't know. But that could come into play if they had something like that. But as a general rule, they are still part of the city, although they're created by ordinance. And, they would look to us, I'm sure, if there was some liability against them, and you could take that into consideration in your formulation of the next year's budget.
Councilor Barnes?
Well, the city, Isaiah, the city attorney, Clifton did an excellent job yesterday defining the differences, responsibilities, and all. That was part of what they wanted. They wanted some clarity, which he did an excellent job. And primarily, as I said, what they want, and I think what should happen is that these are individuals that have been involved in this woman. They want to have more input. And I think rightfully so. For individuals who've had years of expertise in doing things, you'd be kind of crazy not to seek out some guidance somewhere. So primarily, they are happy with what we hashed out. And basically, Clifton had already done a major job, but it was just some tweaking which needed to be done. And that was done yesterday, and I'll be sponsoring it the next meeting in April.
And advisory is not, that's a different situation.
Which is what I had said at first.
Yeah.
But then I wanted them to, but they did not know.
Yeah.
So they really needed to have someone take the time and explain to them the difference,
good.
between the authority and responsibilities, between the authority and an advisory, which Clifton did very well. And I appreciate you taking the time. There was a very protracted, lengthy meeting, but I appreciate you taking the time and going and even clarifying some things for me.
Sure.
All right, thank you. It sounds like there's some, again, productivity on that. And Councilor Allen could not be here today because he had a business conflict. But for those of you who have an opportunity to see him, you may want to bring him up to speed because, at least on where we are, because I think he was, at least at the last time we talked about, fairly adamant about an authority, but I'm not sure he knew of the association, or not the association, the, what are you all calling it? Commission? Advisory
Right.
Commission, yes. So,
But I'll give him a call. I'll
okay.
let him know.
All right, great. Thank you, Pam. We have next the Aquatic Center funding. This is a comparison. We had a referral for comparison of funding and hours of other aquatic centers, and we'll turn it back over, I guess, to Holly.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Before you, you should have some copies that were handed out. There's 3 documents. One is of the presentation. Then you also have 2 other documents that will, I apologize, I didn't realize
Holly, I
that.
don't think that got handed out. I think
apologize.
the other one did.
What you're receiving, though, is a copy of the presentation. There's also 2 additional documents. Obviously, there was a lot of information that could not be shown as part of the PowerPoint, so we've kind of summarized some of it. But you do actually have all of the information that was received from the various facilities that we contacted. I'll wait just a moment so everybody has their paper. Okay. I reached out to 583 recreation professionals across the state of Georgia in trying to obtain as much information as we could on the various facilities. We received information back from 22 of those facilities across the state of Georgia. And if you will take a look at the slide above, Atlanta responded to us. They currently have 3 facilities. And I've broken it down by the facility name, the hours that they operate, if the facility is comparable in size to our facility. So you have an idea, is it a smaller facility, is it larger, is it comparable in size to gallons of water and the type of pool that we have, to give us a better idea of what we're looking at. Also, we've broken it down to give you their annual budget if they disclose it to us. We got a lot of the facilities that did not disclose their budgets to us for various reasons. And then also whether they're operated in-house by the Department of Parks and Recreation or they're outside of the department by third-party management. So as I said, we reached out to Atlanta. Atlanta gave us their 3 facilities. As you can see, Adamsville is 76 hours. They're a smaller facility. They did not disclose their budget, and the city of Atlanta runs their facility. The secondary facility is the Roswell Fan Natatorium. They have 55 hours per week. They are smaller in size to our facility. They did not disclose, and the city of Atlanta operates their facility. Atlanta Washington Park operates 68.5 hours per week. They are smaller, did not disclose in the city of Atlanta. The Augusta Richmond Aquatic Center has 76 hours a week. They are comparable in size to us. They have a very new or somewhat new aquatics director. We weren't able to get as much information as we'd liked, but they did tell us that they do operate their own facility. Boundary Waters Aquatic Center is in Douglasville, Georgia. They operate 72 hours per week. They're smaller than us, and their current budget is $899,798, and that is the city of Douglasville that operates their facility. In Carrollton, they operate their Lakeshore Pool, which is an indoor facility, and all of these are indoor facilities. We only counted those that are indoor. They do offer a lot of outdoor facilities in many communities, but we, of course, were strictly to our indoor facilities. Carrollton is the Lakeshore Pool. They operate 79 hours per week. Their facility is smaller. They did not disclose, and Carroll County operates their facility. Cherokee County Aquatic Center operates at 89.5 hours per week. Their facility is very comparable in size to our facility and is very similar in the layout of their facility. They are budgeted at $1,150,620.35 from local government, and the city of Cherokee County operates their facility. Next is listed our facility with our dimensions and our hours. Next, we visited Cobb and spoke with the staff there at Cobb County. They have 4 facilities, and those facilities are Mountain View at 77 hours. That is the facility that is the largest that they operate and most comparable to our facility. Unfortunately, they did not disclose their budget, and Cobb County operates all of their indoor facilities. The second facility was Central Aquatic. They are operated
Hold on a
76
second.
hours.
Holly, which one did you say was most comparable? Oh, Cobb, I'm sorry.
Cobb, they have
Gotcha.
4 facilities, but the first one I have listed, which is Mountain View, is the most comparable in size to our facility.
All right, thank you.
Unfortunately, as I said, they did not disclose their information to us as far as budget goes. And then they have the next 3 facilities, which are Central Aquatic at 76 hours, South Cobb at 54 hours, West Cobb at 73 hours. The next facility is the Cummings Aquatic Center. They operate 92 hours per week. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Oh, was. Okay. The Cummings Aquatic Center at 92 hours. Their facility is also very similar to ours. Both Cherokee and Cummings and the Columbus Aquatic Center are very similar in the way they're designed. They're very similar in the layout and very similar in the type pools they have. And so we're the most comparable. Their budget is $1.4 million, and it is budgeted by local government. And it's also run by the city of Cumming. Francis Meadows Aquatic Center is in Gainesville, Georgia. They operate at 74 hours per week. They're a smaller facility, and they're budgeted at $1.3 million, and theirs is based on fees, charges, and they have a fixed millage rate that funds their parks and recreation. And it is also operated by the city of Gainesville. Also, Gwinnett is a city. They have 5 aquatic indoor facilities. The first one being the Bogan Aquatic Center. They are 70 hours. They are smaller in size. They did not disclose. Gwinnett did not give us any of their information for their budget. They are operated in-house. Gwinnett Bethesda Aquatic Center is operated at 72 hours a week. They are smaller, did not disclose, in the city of Gwinnett. Next, you have the Gwinnett Collins Hill Aquatic Center. It is a smaller facility that operates at 72 hours a week and is operated by Gwinnett. The Mountain Park Aquatic Center is 75 hours per week. It is smaller, and as I said, we did not get their budget. Gwinnett Aquatic Center is 77 hours, and they are smaller and did not disclose. Mike Daniels Aquatic Center is in Troup County. It's in LaGrange. It is 53 and a half hours per week, but they are a much smaller facility than we are. And I say that if you look at your other sheets, the larger Excel pages, it will break it down for you and tell you in size. It tells you what kind of pools they have and what their facility is composed of as far as the type of pools. But for space sake, we narrowed it down to whether they were smaller, larger, or comparable. Their annual budget is $625,000. From that, they get $475,000 as a grant from a local foundation. $15,000 comes from their Chamber of Commerce, and $135,000 is funded through memberships, rentals, and programs, and Troup County operates that facility. The Savannah Chatham Aquatic Center operates 83 hours a week. They are very comparable in size to our facility, and they're budgeted by their local government at $1.53 million, and they're operated by Chatham County. Rockdale Aquatic Center is in Rockdale County. They are 74 hours a week. They are smaller, and their facility operates at $95,000, but that only includes their chemicals for the year. Their pool is about half the size of our competition pool, so it's a very, very small indoor facility. But the $95,000 does not include the includes the chemicals, but does not include their staff or utilities. So basically, the $95,000 only represents chemicals and nothing else. They were not able to give me any additional information. As I said, when I reached out to all of the departments in the state of Georgia that we have through GRPA, I also got a lot of answers back saying, no, I'm sorry, we don't have a facility, and that is comprised of the list you have before you. There's 18 communities that responded back, but we thought it was important to let people know that what cities don't have facilities such as ours or any type of indoor facility. So before you have all of the counties or cities that do not have a facility in their community. We also reached out to 2 communities that we did know that had indoor aquatic centers, and unfortunately they did not respond back to us in a time for us to get the information to you today. Beyond...
Let me ask you real quick, Holly. I think I'm reading this right. Maybe I've missed it. But in this list, which, by the way, is great, thank you, and I guess as people respond, we can update this.
Sure.
I think also, if you would, get with the city attorney. I hate to do it, but if they're not going to be cooperative, and maybe it's just because they're busy, let's just send them an open records request. They
Part of it was that last week was spring break in many of these communities, and unfortunately, time frame and trying to get the information together. I apologize, but it wasn't for willingness to not respond. They just everybody was on vacation.
Right. Well, I mean, I was talking about the did not disclose, did not disclose. All of these are public entities and would be subject to the Open Records Act. So obviously it could be, look, they're running facilities. They got things they got to do, not help us as a first priority. So maybe they'll come along as they get some time. If not, let's do open records requests. They got to keep this stuff separate. And the other thing is, it says operated by City of Atlanta, Augusta, Douglasville. Which ones have third-party vendors?
None that we contacted, and like I said, sent it out to everybody in the state of Georgia that are members of Georgia Recreation and Parks Association. That was the largest net that I could cast because, as I stated, there were over 580 people on the email list. They represent all athletics and aquatics across the state, and no one responded back to us. And I compiled everyone who did, and no one had a third-party vendor. Those are all operated in-house by their Parks and Recreation departments.
Well, I have to say I'm stunned. And maybe this is for offline a conversation if it's too in depth. I don't want to take time. But how in the world then do the people responding to the RFPs purport to have expertise in running natatoriums and aquatic centers when there's not a public one we can find in the entire state of Georgia?
I can't answer that question other than to say perhaps they offer and they run those outside the state of Georgia in other cities and
Okay.
other states.
Well, then let's do this as a referral. Can we look back at these various RFPs, because we've done 2 now? I'd like somebody to pull what the various entities that have applied, and obviously many didn't get it, but I'd like to see what they say their experience is.
Sure. And perhaps in some way, because they are operated by third party, maybe they don't have someone in their department of Parks and Recreation per se that was on the email list, and we can certainly reach out. If we know a community has a third party, we can certainly reach out to them.
Okay, well, let's just shore up that information a little bit more, because that's very surprising to me. I really expected you to come back with everybody having third-party vendors
Sure.
other than 1 or 2, because I think we have an understanding, at least it's my perception, that this body has an understanding that aquatic centers are so complex that a Parks and Rec facility couldn't possibly hire somebody to run it. And I mean, again, that's my perception of the conversation. Sure. And then apparently that's not accurate. So that changes what I have been thinking through this entire conversation. So let's drill down a little bit more. I want to see,
Certainly.
and certainly share with council, I want to see what these entities are claiming is their expertise in running public natatoriums. Mm-hmm. And just figure this out a little bit more.
Certainly.
Okay.
And if there's facilities that we can find out that are offered by third party, we'll be happy to get that information. It's just that no one, and like I said, I tried to cast a really wide net because I wanted to encompass the entire state of Georgia, and that was the fastest way, with it being spring break, that I could do so. So hopefully we were able to get as much information as possible. But if there are others, we will certainly be able to reach out. As I said, these are two cities that we were familiar with that did have, but unfortunately we did not get any information back from them, so we could not move forward. Next, as I said, we reached out to colleges and universities to give us a different perspective on how their facilities were operated. Before you have 9 facilities that responded to us. The same information is provided for each of those. The first one was Denison University. They're in Granville, Ohio. They're in 30 and a half hours per week. They're smaller in size. And $200,000 is for salaries, equipment, and chemicals, but they do not pay their own utilities or infrastructure. That is paid by the university. It is offered and operated by the University of Denison. Georgia Gwinnett College from Lawrenceville, Georgia, they operate at 44 hours a week. They are smaller in size and would not disclose it. And I will note that when it came to these, there were quite a few that they were very adamant that they would not release that information to us. Much more so, it was more they would not disclose it versus not having the staff available to give us the information.
Well, and again, and it's, the objective is not to be ugly, it's just to get information. And the city attorney can advise you. I believe they're public entities, even though they're educational institutions and a part of the Georgia University system, perhaps. And I think they're subject to the Open Records Act. Hold on. Yes, he confirms they are.
Okay. Georgia Southern in Statesboro, Georgia operates at 91 hours per week. They're smaller. The director there told us they have $50,000. That is strictly for awards and apparel. They do not pay their utilities, infrastructure, chemicals, or salaries. Those come from the university budget, and it is operated by Georgia Southern. Georgia Tech operates at the largest amount of hours of any facility that we found. They operate at 155 hours per week. They are the most comparable in size from these facilities to our facility. They're budgeted at $1 million, and this covers their staff, equipment, and chemicals, but they do not pay their utilities or infrastructure. And their funding comes from state allocation, students, and activity fees. And as I said before, they're operated by the university in-house. Middle Georgia State University, which is in Macon, Georgia, operates at 63 hours per week. They are smaller comparison to the Columbus Aquatic Center, and they would not disclose their budget, and they are operated by the university. Ohio State University operates at 122 and a half hours per week. They are a facility that is comparable in size to ours. They operated a $2.6 million budget. This includes their salaries, chemicals, utilities, infrastructure, and equipment, and it is operated in-house by the university. The University of Alabama is at 76 and a half hours per week. They are comparable in size to our facility. They are $130,000, but that does not include their salaries, infrastructure, or utilities. This only covers the chemicals and equipment that they purchase, and it's operated by the university. The University of Georgia is at 100 hours per week. They are also comparable in size to our facility. Their budget is $272,000, and we didn't get any other information from them. That was all they would give us, and they are operated by the university. The University of North Georgia in Dahlonega, Georgia, is 35 and a half hours per week. They are a smaller facility, and they did not disclose